about the One World Alliance, and one of the linchpins of the global network is indeed Qatar Airways. One of the most powerful members, Qatar, is now questioning whether to bail out of One World. Akbar al-Bakar is the chief executive of Qatar Airways, says he's tired of taking heat from his One World partners. Now, the reality is, though, wherever Akbar flies, he's running into some kind of dispute. So we've just got a sort of a map to show you. When it comes to the United States, now, the US has long complained that they face unfair competition from Gulf carriers. Now, we know, of course, that Qatar tried and failed to buy a 10% stake in the American Airlines last year, thus leaving a lot of bad taste in the mouth between Qatar and American, and maybe the CEOs. US carriers are also worried about Air Italy. Now, Air Italy, in which Qatar owns best part of 0.5% and certainly probably has control, Italy is flying to the US, and the US Secretary of State has raised the question as whether this is improper and a breach of the agreement that Qatar, the nation, made with the United States. Then there are clashes with Qantas, which is unhappy over Qatar's new routes to Australia. And if you talk about the Gulf itself, well, you've got a whole host of problems here. You fly to Qatar, you used to fly to all the neighbours in the region. Now, the diplomatic dispute between Qatar and the other countries continues, and all those routes have gone, leaving Qatar isolated in the blockade. Akbar al-Bakar is the chief executive. Chief, you join me in the C-suite. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you.
You just heard the upsum of the troubles and woes. You seem to be making mischief wherever you go.
I always like making mischiefs. So do you.
What is the relationship now between yourselves and One World? You've said you're thinking of leaving. How serious are you?
You know, Richard, whenever I say something, I'm very serious. There is no point of us staying in One World when we are being bullied by the big boy and continuously trying to undermine our progress and trying to pull the carpet from underneath us having relationship with other airlines.
So by the One World members, you mean Qantas for their Australia routes and American Airlines in the United States?
Exactly.
They would say they're merely protecting their territory.
Well, the territory is too big, so they need to protect it not from us, but they should also protect it from other people who are players in this very big field. United States is the largest aviation market. There is business for everybody, but because they cannot keep up with our product, with competition, with the standards that we provide to our passengers, and this is all about quality of product that we have.
And this argument that you're having with the United States over Air Italy, you have effect. I mean, you may not have legal control, but effectively you own the airline, and there will be, you know, the Secretary of State has said this is in breach of the agreement between Qatar and the US.
Let me stop you here. First of all, we don't control the airline. We are a minority shareholder. The AQA, the foundation of Aga Khan, owns 51%. When we talked about taking a stake in Air Italy, it was in 2015. We signed the acquisition in 2016. We started applying and got permission to fly to United States in 2017, and we did an agreement drafted by the United States government in January of 2018. And none of this issue was raised at that time. But because now Air Italy is competing on the transatlantic route, that the three big boys are complaining. It has nothing to do with our agreement. We have not violated. Qatar never violates an agreement that it signs.
The argument would be, of course, I mean, what you've done with Air Italy is very similar to what Etihad did with Darwin, when it then rebranded, admittedly, it rebranded it Etihad Regional. But you get to the maximum allowable legal, but if you have effective ownership.
No, you're not comparing apple to apple. Darwin is a domestic European carrier. We are flying to United States directly from our hub. We do not and will not break our agreement that we have with the United States. And this is all about free freedom, and we are not doing any free freedom from Europe to United States.
You seem to be fighting on a lot of fronts at the moment.
And I'm winning.
Well, okay, but I mean, you've got obviously the effects of the blockade, which you've told me before is having obviously an effect on your business and your traffic. But shouldn't you be trying to make friends elsewhere rather than fighting on all fronts?
We have big friends. We have friends in IAG, LATAM, Cathay Pacific.
You own them?
We don't own them. We are just a shareholder. But don't forget that these people who are creating so much noises about our fifth freedom over Europe don't realize that we own 21% of their JV.
We need to talk about Saudi Arabia and the situation there. Now, obviously, Qatar and Saudi, I was going to say sworn enemies, but it would appear to be at the moment, at least at government levels, so the vitriol between the two. Now you've got the Khashoggi situation. What do you make of it?
First of all, we were never a sworn enemy of anybody. We treated them as families. Actually, they undermined us. They blockaded us, so we never undermine anybody. But let me tell you something. Now, who is practicing terrorism? It was my country or them? Secondly, this shows that we are a victim of MBS's recklessness. He's not only becoming reckless for our region, but he's now also becoming reckless on the global scene. And it is now time that the West, especially United States, put a real stop to it.
What does that mean when you say put a real stop to it? Because the administration here seems to suggest that it's going to go along with this idea of a rogue killer or rogue team or whatever, and as quickly as possible go to business as usual, back to normal.
I'm sorry. Rogues don't come in aeroplanes. They don't come in a planned entry and exit. They don't carry such acts, which is state-sponsored. So I don't buy this rogue killer. I'm sorry. But let me tell you,
what should they do?
Let me tell you something, that arms is playing a great part in the US looking the other way. And I don't think that this is as per the principles of the foundation of United States. Let me quote you something that Eisenhower said in his farewell speech in 1961. We must guard against acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by military-industrial complex. This has a potential for disastrous rise of misplaced power. This is exactly now being practiced. And I think this is not in the best interest of United States in front of the public opinion around the world.
Is there a certain, satisfaction is the wrong word, schadenfreude maybe at the discomfort that the Saudis, I mean the Saudis have been attacking Qatar pretty heavily and been the leaders in the blockade.
But we are winning.
Well, you say that.
Yes, we are winning because the whole world opinion has now changed against them and in our favor. And I take a great pride in what is happening, that the world has now realized who is the victim.
At the end of the day, though, the world continues to want to do business with Saudi, this conference this weekend. Everybody will be back there. In the same way that nobody has broken ranks commercially with Qatar, because you've all got so much money to spend, and every country and every business needs it.
It's not about money, it's about, it's about principle. And don't forget that this Davos in desert, don't you think has collapsed? Because all the major players, all the who is who in the world have all withdrawn for the sake of principle.
Finally, we've talked broadly, and you've been very honest. How can you be the chairman of IATA, which is the governing body, if you like, or the representative body of airlines, when you're at loggerheads with so many of your other members? I mean, what happens at the meetings? You barely...
You know, when I sit on as a chairman of IATA, I look at the interest of all the airlines. But when I'm the CEO of Qatar Airways, I only look at the interest of Qatar Airways, and this is the difference. I have been working very, very studiously, and I have been working very dedicatedly for the interest of all the airlines as the chairman of IATA.
You're still enjoying it?
Yes, I always enjoy my job.
How long are you going to do it for?
As long as they want me.
That's probably quite a while. Thank you very much. Good to see you. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.